Textual Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
AB Supply, this is Terry.
Hi, buddy. Give me something to work with. What's the first curiosity that comes to your head?
Probably like installing door closers.
Okay. Which specific type of closer would you like to talk about?
Probably just like the ones you see every day, like 1371s and things like that.
Okay. All right. This is a really good subject. Let's take a look.
Okay, so you mentioned 1371. All right, fine. Now that's a discontinued closer, but everything we're about to talk about is completely applicable. So type in 1371 and then go to page 2, I think. Yeah, and then scroll down to the bottom, second from the bottom. And when you load the page, scroll down to templates and installation instructions. Now, surface closers are easy. There are 3 ways to mount a surface closer. There are 3 primary ways. You can incorporate a jam bracket or a corner bracket. That would be a derivative of probably top jam, I would say. But there are 3 ways to do this. You're either going to install the closer in either a top jam mount, a regular arm mount, or a parallel arm mount. And all of that has everything to do with where you are installing the body of the closer. So a regular arm mount is going to put the body on the door and always on the pull side of the door. Some people have said to me, like, well, the pull side of the door can be either side, because there are times I'm pulling it and times I'm pulling it from one side or pulling it from the other. That's true, but let's not be inane. The natural state of a door is to be closed. Otherwise, you don't need a door. So when the door is closed and you're pulling it, there's only one side of the door you can stand on. So regular arm mount means inherently door body is mounted on the door on the pull side.
Do you have your order number?
The next one is most common is parallel arm, and that's when the body is also mounted on the door, but it's mounted now on the push side of the door. That would be typical. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. The third type is called top jam. That's when the body is mounted on the header and it's mounted on the push side of the door. So when someone says, hey, how do I install this door closer? The first thing you say is, where are you installing it in relationship to the door? Well, so the first question is the body of the closer going to be on the door or on the header? They're always going to say the door. The next question is the body going to be mounted on the push side or the pull side? Assuming you don't need to clarify that for the client, it's either the push side or the pull side. So the pull side, regular arm mount, is what you would see in a bathroom in a restaurant. Restaurant doors in bathrooms swing into the bathroom. Parallel arm, same restaurant, but now the front door or the back door. Remember that restaurant we did for the Albanian owner of the diner? His back metal doors, those were outswing. They're always going to be outswing. So that would be a parallel arm mount because the body will be on the door, but it's on the push side. Now, you'll note that the closer here on Enterprise, that closer body's mounted on the outside. Well, that's wrong, because you don't want the body exposed to the elements. Even though here in Southwest Florida, we do it. It's done. You'll see it. And all I did when I put that up was just duplicate what was there. I wasn't interested at that moment of reinstalling a closer in a parallel arm. So, of the 3 primary ways, the first question is, where are you installing the body? If it's on the door, then the next question is push side or pull side. Pull side is regular mount. Push side is parallel arm mount. If it's on the header, then it's called top jam every single time. Now, where you'll see top jam mounted is always going to be in the Jersey Mike's. Body is mounted up on the header. The door swings out. The door always swings out. Body's always mounted on the inside in a top jam. Now, how that pertains to the installation instructions of the 1371 is it just literally shows you, like on page 1 of the 1371 instructions, That is, what mount do you see in step 3? Body's on the door, right?
That is correct. So body's on the door.
And it's on the pull side. So while you don't have to remember it, that's a regular arm mount. That's called regular arm mount. Do they call it that here? They may somewhere. But that's regular arm. All of page 1 really shows regular arm mount. And you'll generally find, oh yeah, so they're calling it pull side. 180 degree template pull side. And in fact, it's the only time that you'll see a pull side. It's the only time a body mounts on the pull side of the door when it's regular arm mount. In door closer installation instructions, you'll generally have 4 pages. 1 page to each of the mount types, and then the 4th page will be the overview.
Okay, is there a PO
How you
number on
adjust the
there?
valves, parts that are included, bill of materials, that kind of stuff. As we go to page 2, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, now you have a push side mount. So, but what they're showing here now is the body mounted on the header. This is called top jam. If you go to page 3, which is really page 4 of the document, now they call it PA mount. So
You notice on that?
that's where the body is mounted on the push side, but on the door. So regular arm mount, top jam mount, and then PA mount, parallel arm bracket. All of these approaches to installing this material is utterly the same in the sense that when you study each of the 3 pages, you are always, if you go down to page 4 and then step 1 of page 4.
Right, looking at it.
You see the 8.5 up to 100 degree, 5.5 up to 180 degree, the box that's there?
Yep.
You are always going to have a reference point from the vertical axis of pivoting to the first hole that you need to drill, whether it be any of the 3 primary ways to mount it. You'll then see a dimension. So the 8.5 is the x-axis. The y-axis could be that to the right and up a little bit, the 3 1/4 or the 4-inch dimensions. There's always going to be a reference of how far down you put it. So regardless of what of the 3 methods you're installing the closer, you're always going to need an X dimension and a Y dimension. Where do I put it on the door and or the frame? And the frame, because part of it will be on the door, part of it will be on the frame. So what makes surface closers really easy is all you care about, once you've determined the method of mounting, which are the 3 primary methods, okay, where do I drill the first hole? And then after that, it's just connect the dots. The question really becomes is, how do you select which of the 3 methods you use? Regular arm and top jam are the most efficient way for a door closer to get the door closed. What I mean by that is, if you stay on page 4, when you look at step 5 shows it. Bubble 3,
What is your
it
email?
shows the forearm. The forearm is parallel to the face of the door. That's where it comes from. Part of the arm assembly is parallel to the face of the door. In a parallel arm mount, the door closer is not as effective at getting the door closed because if you look in step 3 of page 4 and you zoom in,
Yeah, it looks like
you'll
it's
see the
working
spindle
on
of the
it.
closer body. It's a square-shaped piece that the arm fits onto. In a parallel arm mount, when you go from 0 to 90 degree, door closed to 90
Still
degree
trying to
open,
identify
that
it.
spindle only rotates about 45 degree. In a regular arm or top jam mount, because your arm is perpendicular to the face of the frame or the face of the door, when the door goes from 0 to 90, you get a 90 degree rotation out of that spindle. So the closer, when it's rotating the spindle 90 degrees because the door is going from 0 to 90, it engages, it forces the spring to compress a lot more, so you have a lot more stored energy through the opening cycle of the door. You're storing more energy in that spring. In a parallel arm, think of you only compressing the spring 2 inches.
Okay,
But in a top jam or a regular arm mount, think of yourself as compressing the spring 4 inches. So when you let the door go, the spring's under a lot more tension, so it wants to push more with more force and for a longer amount of time because it needs to relax more because it's been compressed more. So the question becomes is, which of the three do you select? You always want the most efficient, regular arm or top jam. In the bathroom scenario, you're going to select regular arm most likely because you don't want to see the door closer body. You want it on the inside of the bathroom. You don't want people sitting at the booths looking at ugly door hardware. In the same restaurant, on the back door, you don't want that door closer mounted on the outside. You want it on the inside of the building so it doesn't get damaged by weather. Because you have a loss of efficiency on that parallel arm mount, generally, if you have an adjustable spring closer, you will increase the spring power right away by one full step. You can see on page 3, step 5, it shows you how you're adjusting the spring power on adjustable spring closers. Many of them today are. A top jam is really great because it allows you to have the best of both worlds. The closer is on the inside of the building and you get full efficiency out of the door closer. The problem with top jam is because of the header size, generally on hollow metal being 2-inch or aluminum being 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, you often cannot install a closer body on the header because you don't have enough real estate to drill the holes. Next time you're in a Starbucks, a Jersey Mike's, any sort of aluminum storefront, look at the closer installation and you will likely see drop plates, pieces of additional metal that have been added because they don't have enough room to install the hardware. Like, think of an aluminum storefront door where it's all glass. You usually have very little amount of aluminum up above. And I'll tell you, the front door here on Enterprise, that's probably why they installed it outside, because they didn't have a drop plate, because the top rail on the aluminum door might be just 2-inch. It's not enough room to get the closer installed. So the question about closers is, how do I install this? And you'll say, well, let's determine the best of the three for you right now. And those are you always want highest efficiency, and you always want to protect your hardware. You always want your hardware to be concealed, okay? And you always want your hardware to perform according to the application. So you select from those options the greatest common denominator is really what it is. What questions do you have?
The question that I have is, so generally, parallel arm, it should only be, you should only mount it in a parallel arm when you have to because it's the least efficient of the three mounting types.
Yeah, the closer has to do more work to actually get it to close. Plus, the problem with parallel arm, NFPA 101, the life safety standard, literally lists a clear opening height of, I believe, 80-inch. The problem, and don't quote me on that dimension, but if you install closers in a parallel arm, you might be encroaching into the clear free vertical space as specified by NFPA 101. So that's a disadvantage of that as well. If you're carrying something through the opening, you've got this door closer arm hanging into the opening, you've got less clear space. So that's another disadvantage to it as well.
Understood.
But regardless of how you go about installing it in the three primary ways, you're always going to have adjustments. That's listed on all of the individual pages, meaning latch speed, closing speed, adjusting the spring power, adjusting back check, adjusting whatever other adjustments, like delayed action would be on there as well. Delayed action, back check, latch, sweep, spring power. You can easily have 5 valves on a closer. LCNs, their 4040 series, have a valve on the back that allows you to turn off the back check because there are certain times when you need to do that, depending on how you're installing it. But when a client calls and says, how do I do this? You want to first say, well, what's the best way to do it? But in general, what I had said earlier about conceal the hardware, most efficient, what's the greatest common denominator about installing it. There's never a perfect way. And then there are problems with surface closers and the fact that really when you get to 225 pounds, beyond that, surface closers are never going to be prescribed to close doors because it's just too heavy. The door's got too much mass for a spring to close, and that's when you get into floor closers. You talk about concealed closers that you don't want to see the hardware, overhead, installed in the header, installed in the top of the door. There's all kinds of way to close doors, and it's always a matter of what's the most practical for the application. But regardless of it being LCN or Norton or Sargent or Corbin Russwin or any other company, the format of the approach is always the same. Which of the three is your best? Let's pull that document up and look at it only. Get your X and Y, double check, measure twice, cut once, and that's how you install it. Make your adjustments after it's installed. You really want the Y to be accurate, because if the vertical location isn't correct, your arm is going to hit. If you've ever walked through an opening and you could hear the arm hit the top of the door, either something's loose or it's been installed in the wrong location. So I personally like the Norton catalog when it comes to a new person to hardware, learning hardware, because they devote a page to every application. But I also like the LCN catalog as well, because it's consolidated really well with parts. But you do have to understand a little bit better with LCN the differences between a 4010, a 4020, a 4030, a 4040. You got to know what's the difference between a 3130 series and a 2130 series on the concealed stuff. And at the end of the day, when you have a question, you always look in the manufacturer's catalog. In most instances, they've been in business for a century or more, so their catalog is the result of 100+ years of refinement. You ask tech support if you still don't know. You ask your coworkers if you still don't know. You ask your client if you still don't know. At the end of the day, you have all possible means of technical support to help you get there. You should never assume. You should always make sure that you thoroughly understand it. Looking at instructions, looking at templates, and looking at the product catalog is a threefold way by which you learn hardware. And hardware, like music, like Mike Keeney said once upon a time, it's self-taught. Yeah, sure, you've got a teacher, but you're really doing the practice on your own. That's self-taught.
Right, exactly.
Anything else?
Is there anything that you have to do once the closer is mounted, installed, so to speak, to make sure that it's actually working properly?
Well, you probably would have to adjust the valves. So you need to make sure that it closes and latches, does so at the proper rate, does so if it's handicap compliant, that it's opening at the reduced amount of pounds of force, which is 5 pounds if you measure it with a force gauge, to within whatever, 2, 3, 4 inches of the latch, edge of the door. You want to make sure that the door actually closes, not too fast, not too slow. And maybe the next talk we have can be just the control valves on a closer and define what each of them do. But you would then get your Allen wrench, and it's not always an Allen wrench, sometimes it's a slotted screwdriver, and you make your fine adjustments over the valves, because when a door opens, all of that relates to a spring being compressed, a really big spring. Think of Babcock Davis yellow, red, green, blue springs, okay? Think of compressing that by 4 inches. Think of if on a Bilco lifting mechanism, if you pulled the bolt out, that thing would go shooting like a shotgun because of the compressed spring. That's what's happening inside the closer, but what's arresting it is the movement of fluid through valves. As you modify the position of the valve control, you modify the rate at which the oil flows. You can make a door slam shut because you're opening that valve up. You can make a door creep close to where it'll take 5 minutes to close, and that's when you really close the valve down so that the fluid is just dripping through there very slowly, leaking through there very slowly. And your job is to find the right balance for the environmental conditions and the code requirements and the client's requirements. So a closer is almost never adjusted right out of the box correctly for every environment, so you always have to expect to have to tweak it with the wrench or the screwdriver after. But you got to make sure you don't open the valve all the way, because the valve stem, the needle valve, can pop out and all the fluid comes out, and then you're in trouble. It's nice to have closers that feature staked valves, because it keeps people from removing the needle valve and then the oil escaping from the cylinder body.
Awesome.
Okay, so next week, think of a different topic, and I'll see you at the same bat time and same bat place next week.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Please click thumbs up
Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.